We have the most incredible panel, and I would love for you all to start introducing yourself. So we can start with yourself, Michelle, maybe.
Okay, my name is Michelle Gildernew. I'm the MP for Fermanagh South Tyrone. I live in the Brantry in County Tyrone, so Dungannon my nearest town, but I'm still quite a bit out from town. So my biggest breastfeeding support was my sister Gail, who's here with us today too.
Thank you. We'll move over to Gail then. Perfect.
Well, my name's Gail Gildernew. I'm obviously, Michelle's introduced me there as her sister, so that's. I also live in the Brantry, which is very, very rural. I have 4 kids, 3 older, and then, so they're 24, 22 and 20, and then the baby's 3.5, and I'm still currently feeding her morning and night. Sure Start has been a fabulous support, but my biggest support, I will repeat that back, was Michelle, sister, fabulous support. I was the first of 5 sisters to have a child, so it was kind of very scary to step into it. But I found breastfeeding the second time around with the wee one much easier. I think I was more confident in myself. But again, couldn't have done it without the support of Michelle and the rest of the sisters. So thank you.
And we will move over to Maria and Sean.
Hi. This is my husband, Sean. We're parents of 2 breastfed babies. So one is about 6, one's about 3.
It's a little bit difficult to hear you there, Maria, maybe.
No, sit forward.
Oh, yeah, perfect. There we go.
So we are not long finished our breastfeeding journey with our youngest, who is about to turn 3. And Sean was a huge support to me. Many issues and many celebrations during both of our breastfeeding journeys.
Wonderful. And we will move over to Louise.
Hello, I'm Louise Taylor, and I have breastfed 3 of my kids. I'm still currently breastfeeding my youngest, who is 1.5 years. And I'm originally from Drytrosna. I live in just outside Portadown, and I fall outside of the Sure Start areas. So there has literally no support like in the rural area for me. So I really heavily relied on my close circle telling me I can continue to do this. My husband was amazing. He kept saying, like, have like a can-do attitude, because we were both so clueless in the very beginning. We didn't know. I was the very first person in my family to breastfeed, which was just surreal, and everybody tiptoed around me. I had to move out of different rooms because I was making people feel uncomfortable, but I was okay with that. But it was I was setting the foundations to the next people to come after me. Another like 4 or 5 of my family have went on to have babies, and they all successfully breastfeed. So I kind of broke the mold a wee bit. So I'm okay with that. But yeah, if it wasn't for my husband, I probably would have given up.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we're going to introduce Ita as well, who's coming in from Clogher Valley Sure Start.
Thank you, Catherine. Hello, everybody. I'm Ita Quinn, and I'm a family participation worker here in Clogher Valley Sure Start. And as you know, Sure Starts are embedded in the rural community as well as in around the towns. And unfortunately, we're still in the electoral ward areas. That's what we're bound by. And obviously, we'd be campaigning to get Sure Starts extended into the wider areas. I firmly believe from my heart it should be a universal service. But we're still lobbying, so we are for that. Anna's in Sure Start. We support Booze and Pals would be ours in Clogher Valley Sure Start, but baby-friendly initiatives, any baby friend is welcome in any room and any of our programs. We also, we are level 2 trained in baby-friendly initiative, and we're going for a level 3 within Clogher Valley Sure Start. We would have a weekly Booze and Pals, which is a breastfeeding support. And that's where you can access a one-to-one. You can telephone in, and we would offer home visits as well. So we would, and also within Sure Start, we would advocate and promote our breastfeeding services at all our antenatal programs and parenting programs. So we would. Within Clogher Valley Sure Start, we have health visitors available. We have staff trained and baby friendly. And we are also very lucky. We have a community with midwife who works 4 days in core, but 1 day in Clogher Valley Sure Start. So that's a very brief synopsis of what we have here in Clogher Valley Sure Start. And I'm lucky enough to live in the heart of the Clogher Valley. I live in Ballygawley, so I do. So I'm born and bred a rural girl. And I am a grandmother and currently supporting my daughter. She's had 2 young children and is currently breastfeeding. So it's a very different perspective from me. I'm supporting her as a grandmother in her breastfeeding journey. So I'm delighted to be here this morning. And listening ears for all your own experiences, because you have the wealth of experience, and that's what we take on board and in our service delivery going forward of how we can best support mommies and daddies and families in their breastfeeding journey. Thank you, Catherine. That's all for me now.
Thank you so much, Ida. It's amazing to have you all here and to have this conversation, because it is so important for us to be sharing this, our experiences. So I suppose the very first question that I do want to ask you, and some of you did touch on it there, can you tell me about what your introduction to breastfeeding was, and how you decided to breastfeed your children, or your family decided to breastfeed their children?
Who do you want to go first, Catherine?
Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, right then. So just a wee bit more detail. My children are a wee bit older. They're 19, 16 and 12. And when I started to breastfeed, I suppose I was at that stage, an MP and an MLA, wanted to show that if I could breastfeed successfully and work, that it wasn't a barrier to other women. And I suppose I wanted to use my public role as an advocate for breastfeeding and to try and encourage other people. Our babies were all born in the urn and in the and they kept making sure my milk was delicious. So I got a great start in the urn to the community health visiting team, which was brilliant. And the health visitor said to me, look, we have a breastfeeding support group in Dungannon. Vera would love to see you. And I went, I'm not really the support group type. She says, no, please come. So I went, and it was the best decision, because I got amazing Geraldine Conlon Alley. Some of your older ones might remember Geraldine was there back in the day, but I've made friends for life, and others have kept up the advocacy and support for me and others. It was the Sure Start breastfeeding support group where one of the midwives said to me, put my second baby on the boob to get the heel prick, and from that every injection that Ewan and Isha was on the boob. And that was, it's those wee tips, those wee life tips that just help you so much. As Gail has said, her children were a wee bit older than mine, and she was the one that I'd have phoned in the middle of the night or whatever and been there to support. Louise is dead, right? My husband, again, couldn't have done it without him. I mean, somebody just to answer the door and to do the picking up and all of that. And as the children got older, Jimmy's support became even more important. And certainly I couldn't have considered keeping my breastfeeding journey going for as long as I did without him. By the time I had Isha, and I mean, I went to the breastfeeding support group for every baby. I had done it before, but the babies hadn't. And you just needed that boost and that to get that confidence from other women, and then ended up going for a lot longer to give that confidence and support to the women coming behind me. So Sure Start was certainly invaluable, and the work that they do in my community, I was lucky I got in. So I understand Louise's pain, and I've raised it with the health minister that Sure Start should be universal and should be available to every woman and every family. So I think that's vitally important. I suppose at the start, I wasn't prepared for how difficult it was and how painful it could be. And, you know, I felt we had breastfeeding awareness week when Emmett was 6 weeks old. And I thought, if I get to that point, I can give it up and know that I've done okay. And somewhere around the 5-week mark, it clicked and it all became very easy. And that summer, I spent it through a packet of wipes and a nappy into the handbag, and away went. There was no lugging, changing bags or anything else. He was portable and away we would go. So to me, it was also the last point I'm going to make. The bonding that I got as a really busy mother. When Isha was born, she was 6 weeks old when the crisis happened, I was the agriculture minister then. Aisha was in Brussels once or twice a month. She was in London before she was baptized, and she was in New York for her first birthday. So a very well-traveled baby. And because I breastfed them all, I could take them to work with me. And not everybody can do that. But if the party wanted me working, then it had to be baby too. So Ewan was breastfed in number 10 Downing Street. I just took the baby and away we went, and I continued to work. But because I was so busy, because I was able to breastfeed, the bonding that we had was invaluable. And I don't think I'd have been as close to my children without that nurturing that I was able to give, and the support that it meant. Every fall and every catching the finger on the door or something that was straight onto the boob, and the comfort that they got from that was just amazing. And as a working mum, to have that bond established, even though I went off to work and Jimmy stayed at home with the children for a period of time, I knew that I was their mummy and I could do something that nobody else could do. And to me, when Gail then had her wee late one, Sierra, and the roles kind of reversed. Then that I had done it and come through it and was there for her the next time around. But honest to God, Gail was the first person I knew well to breastfeed, and because of her, I was able to successfully do it. And I think we want to break that stigma. I would have breastfed in public a lot, and I love the wee breastival cards, and I've given them out to so many girls and said, "There you go, fair play to you for breastfeeding in public. Let's normalise this." So. Thank you for having me here today, Catherine. Looking forward to the rest of the questions.
Right. Yeah, I suppose that's the thing, is breastfeeding is so much more than just the nutritional value that our babies are getting from their milk. There's the comfort, there's the bonding, and there's so much more to it as well. So I suppose, Gail, seeing as you've had kind of both ends of being the first and being the most recent, what kind of experiences has it been for you? Like you said, it's slightly easier this time round. What for you has changed from
it has changed massively. The whole public perception has changed massively. Now, I was very young when I did. I was only 19, and I only managed to feed her and Owen both for 4 weeks, and then I fed Rihanna for 10 weeks. But I found it nothing prepared you, and nobody prepared you for how difficult it was, firstly, because you just think, oh, it should be easy. But I found it very lonely to begin with when I was younger. Now, as an older mum now, I'm now 44 and Sierra's 3.5. I find it, I don't care. I'll not go to the bedroom and feed. I'll just sit, wherever I am. I'm more confident in myself. I think that's made a difference. But society has changed as well. It's become more acceptable in society, and it's much more friendly. And then you have the Facebook groups and the likes of this that is fabulous for support. As Michelle said there too, brilliant for comforting them. Like I've now got Sierra where she gets a wee nurse morning and night. She's for play school now, and we've talked about, when she goes to play school, maybe it's time to stop. But her dad was, worse than useless, maybe. But he even was in the house on Friday, and she looked at me and she says, "Mummy, can I have milk?" And I says, "Sierra," because she knows it's kind of morning and night. And she goes, "No, I mean milk out of the fridge." And her dad was standing there and he goes, "Oh, have you finally stopped?" And I thought, get away and leave me alone. Do your own thing and leave me alone. But yeah, family support was so important, just to have people who you could lift the phone to in the middle of the night, like Michelle, to say, what am I doing wrong here? How do I fix it? Sure Start was brilliant as well. Sierra had chickenpox there early July, and she had 3 awful nights, and I was so grateful that she was still feeding and nursing, that you could just take her into bed and give her a nurse and make her feel a wee bit better, I think that the bond and the comfort you can give them is so amazing. That to me, that's the biggest celebration of it, is just that, the challenges will just overcome them.
And if you've seen Grania Evans' wonderful poem that she released yesterday, What Will I Remember? I mean, that really pulls that in of what can breastfeeding do? What will you remember from your experience of the journey? And I encourage everybody to check out Grania Evans' amazing poem. Maria and Sean, for yourselves, what was your both experiences of being introduced to breastfeeding, but also have you found your experiences as parents differing because of where you're from?
Definitely. Sit forward. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Perfect.
I think because of where we're from, not a lot of people breastfeed out and about. You know, maybe it's different if you live in Belfast and you see on the breastfeeding NI Facebook, like loads of people recommending breastfeeding friendly places to feed, and like someone's come up to them and given them a pat on the back for feeding in public, and we just didn't really have any of that here. I don't think I ever saw anybody breastfeeding in public. None of our parents breastfed, so when you have a child, you know, you go to your mum and you get all that wealth of advice that they have, but they didn't have any advice on breastfeeding. My older sister was one of the very few people I knew who breastfed, but she lived in Belfast. So in and around the area, we really kind of just had each other at the start, and luckily, you know, midwives, health visitors, and everybody's mentioned that. Because the start of our journey was extremely rocky, I guess there was a lot of pressure, and I felt a lot of experience, but I think it was probably a bit terrifying for you to see me go through, you know, an awful lot of struggle and not know where to turn. So I think the most important thing was just having somebody there to fight for and to give you that motivation. After a bit of a rocky start, I think we realized that my main job is just to feed the baby, keep the baby alive, look after the baby. And the way that Sean could do that best would be to look after me.
Yeah, absolutely. And how about for you, Sean?
Um, well, as I said, we had no experience, so I don't know what I was getting into. Like parenthood is like nursing the baby and holding to get it to sleep and making you being sure to have your bonding time and stuff. As a father of a grandchild, you don't really get that opportunity so much because you know, like you just said, like it was just you feel kind of outside. Maybe you're missing opportunities there, but yeah, just as long as we're able to comfortable and everything's okay with her, that was what was asked to do.
I think we've just lost all of your volume sound there. Sorry.
Yeah, right. You hear me okay now?
Yeah, that's much
Right.
better.
Yeah, it's just a case of realizing that the bonding time will come later. What's the baby? Because as long as and um, it's not like we didn't know many around us at all that breastfed, and now we've had two kids, and it's 6 years on almost, and a lot of us. So it's one thing that be prepared. Making doors when people come. It feels like you're doing nothing at the start, but that's all mum needs really at the start. So.
All those three things that are actually really important, like for our
Support's so important. Louise, you've said that you weren't within a Sure Start area, and that's bound to have had such a massive impact on your experience. Where did you find support? I know you said you created your own little bubble almost around you.
Yeah.
How did you do that, and what impact did that have on your breastfeeding journey?
Well, when I found I was pregnant, obviously you get all of the information on Google and you buy all of the baby books because this is just alien to you. Morning sickness, oh my goodness, it's just your body just goes into a different person. And I find this determination I never knew I had, this motivation that I never knew I had. And I researched, I think it's the only thing I ever researched until I was blue in the face in my life. But the more information I find out about breastfeeding, the more I just add it every single day. And then I found a wealth of knowledge in Northern Ireland. And I think that was really it was 8 years ago I started my breastfeeding journey. And that's when BF and I started becoming very vocal. All these women had a voice. And I was like, this is an issue. I've working closely with Nuala Toma, and she knows that I come from a community development background. So I was like, okay, I'm the kind of stiffler for, right, this is an issue. I'm going to prove the world wrong here. I'm going to do this and see how difficult it is. So yes, I was outside of a sure start area, but I was trying to go against the odds and say, I'm doing this. I don't care if the odds are against me, I'm just doing this. So it was the wealth of knowledge with community support, and I met people online that I never have even met before, or and I still haven't met, but that bond was surreal. It really was. And then a few years down the line, I heard about breastable, and I was like, there's like women in this world in Northern Ireland that is thinking like me, that it needs to be a big shift. Like, I know Sure Start, I have heard that there's so many people have, it's invaluable. I wish I could avail of it, but you kind of have to go to yourself, right, and that's not for me. I can't go down that route. We're going to try this. And community is the best thing. So it's getting them key people that you can say the silliest thing to, and you're not going to be judged. You know, you can say, I'm having the worst day on I'm going to give up. But then there's your people to say, no, that's, you know, you can give a bottle if you want to give a bottle. But that's just one. It's just one. It's like losing weight. It's like doing something, you know, just do what you need to do for now, and then backtrack. Start the new day off, keep going. But yeah, if it wasn't for people that knew more than me about breastfeeding, I would completely be, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be able to tell you what I know now. And yeah, and I'm able to then support my other family members who have got on and dinky bellies. Should I go to formula instead of breastfeeding? No, keep perseverance, keep going. You can do this. Just having support just to tell you, unravel, what have you done differently? What's happened? Did she feed a bit extra? You know, it's just, that's the community that you need. And yes, people do need Sure Start, but sometimes if you don't have it, you have to do something else to find a support somewhere else.
You use the resources that you have around you and develop it from that as well. Yeah, I think one of the lines that I've heard so many times in Breastfeeding NI that helped me numerous times was never stop on a bad day. And stop or having that conversation with people and saying, okay, I'm having a bad day. Even recognizing you're having a bad day can help so much. And having that the village to go to and ask those questions, it's so important. And I suppose maybe that's what technology is doing now that we weren't getting beforehand, and that Northern Ireland is shifting again now to having these bigger communities and contactable communities rather than just being with people, having these real connections.
Yeah.
So what would you say we need here in Northern Ireland now to increase our rates, particularly in rural areas? Is there anything that you think would help something? So Ida, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, Catherine, you know, and just, you know, my brain's buzzing here, even what Louise and the other speakers are saying. I think something, and in everything we're talking here today about breastfeeding support, but in everything we do, I think we undervalue the value that we get out of peer support in whatever forum that comes in, the wealth of experience that there is in peer support, that being baby friendly, supporting breastfeeding, parenting, mom struggling with behavioural issues, anything at all. I feel peer support in whatever forum that comes in is an invaluable tool that we have, and an access that we all can have to it. I suppose in Clogher Valley Sure Start, you know, and I feel we are very, very lucky, to be honest with you, and me as a person to be living in the core of the community. We are exceptionally lucky in the Clogher Valley area because we've had one of the highest statistical breastfeeding rates in the whole of Northern Ireland for years and years now. So I feel it is very well embedded, the ethos and baby friendliness. And yes, you're doing baby friendly initiatives, and we're at level 2 going for a level 3. But I just feel, you know, it's lovely. I'm an older worker, and I just think it's absolutely lovely and very humbling as a mommy and a grandparent to see mums now so relaxed feeding. There is really a fantastic shift. I suppose education as well, you know, we're far more educated about it, and as Gertrude was saying, it's, you know, so many places are accessible to it, so they are, and mums are more relaxed. Different forums, social media forums, face-to-face, other girls, you know, a group of girls that come up through secondary school, go on to college, then they meet boyfriends, then they're getting married, and then they're having families. So a lot of their friends is going on a similar journey, and that they're a similar age at that stage, you know, and that kind of support as well. You know, I really do feel peer support, and obviously our professionals like our midwives and that there. I would be out doing visits till wee registration visits and that there to mommies. And like the positive key messages coming out of the hospitals, you know, you're asked, are you feeding now? So it's lovely to hear those positive key messages. Do you intend breastfeeding? And we all know how much pressure our health service is under. So we do so much pressure with COVID and everything else, on top of all the other pressure and target waiting lists. But like, I would be hearing stories from moms on the ground, midwives down in the labour ward saying, you know, how do you intend feeding baby? And the midwives are sitting with the mommies, you know, watching, observing, the latching on, so they are how they're doing, taking that time. And I suppose time is essential, and listening. So it is sitting down, being present with whatever we're going through. You know, when a mom is just having a bad day, that's a fantastic speaking, you know, never give up on a bad day. And it is so true. So it is, you know, but to have that person to listen to, whoever it is, you know, and support you through that, and give you that wee bit of guidance, and just even listening is so positive in itself. So it is. So like, we are here in Sure Start, and I know, you know, we are very lucky to live in a Sure Start area, and we are a rural Sure Start, so we are. And it is invaluable in this area. The isolation barriers are still here. A lot of mums are still staying at home with the current COVID pandemic, you know. Parents, a lot of families are maybe downsized and maybe don't have access to transport. We've had them barriers when we started in Sure Start. We still have those barriers. You know, but I would say to anybody out there, you know, if you're struggling, lift the phone. Core and community midwives and health visitors are there. They have work mobile phones. If you're struggling, lift the phone and say, look, I'm struggling. And I think even people's attitudes have changed massively. So they have. We're not afraid to say, look, I'm having a bad day here, and not feel that we're going to be judged. And hopefully that is very positive key messages that I know I'm here as a Sure Start worker, but that we're all putting out there very positive messages. We're here and here to listen.
I think that's a really, really amazing point, of the fact of having contact with people that's beyond just internet as well. Aideen's put in a really important point there in the chat, talking about the fact that there's still unfortunately some in very rural areas that don't have access to strong internet. So having those touch points of, like Nikita said there as well, about being volunteered through the hospital and being available through text. So these are all things that we need to think about within rural communities, about how we do interact with other people, and particularly over the last 18 months of maybe not being able to get into sessions of parent mornings, and even just getting to a cafe and seeing somebody. I know that a lot of my friends that are breastfeeding mums are people because I've sat down in a cafe and I've seen somebody else breastfeeding and just give them a smile and kind of went, I'm here too. Yeah, we're in this together.
The connection, yeah.
But one question that I really wanted to make sure that we did hit on is, what is different for us as rural families with breastfeeding than people who are living in cities? Louise, do you want to come in on that, and what do you think? Yeah.
Well, I feel that we are connected to our families a lot more. You know, people in urban areas are alone, as in, you know, they might have come from a rural area, but they're way up in Belfast on their own. So in a rural area, you are beside your families, and that if your family isn't accepting that you're breastfeeding, that's a really big lonely place to be. Like, my first child, none of my family didn't unaccept it, but it was an acceptance journey. Still is. You know, I showed them stuff that I'm doing over the weekend, and they were kind of like, oh my goodness, oh, why would you do that? And I'm kind of like, well, you know, I am celebrating what my body's done, what Northern Ireland is doing at the minute. And it does start with us. It starts with me. If somebody has to judge me or talk about me, I might as well give them something to talk about. And that supports the next person. If she can do it, I can do it. So I kind of think that.
Absolutely. I think that it's we have our physical villages now, but making sure that we're within an accepting village can be really, really difficult and to overcome that. I know even from my own experience, and I think I've told some of you this before, I remember being 15 and talking with my family about breastfeeding and going, oh, I'll not breastfeed beyond 6 months. That's too much after that. That's the strange. I remember literally in the middle of Tempest Numa, where our balloon sculpture is, and having this conversation. And just thinking this is so weird. And here I am, I'm still breastfeeding my 3.5-year-old now because I became informed and I found the community who supported me with that information and shared that information. What about for you, Marie and Sean? You've said that you have family that have lived in Belfast. What additional differences were there for you?
I totally agree with everything Louise said. First of all, like a very challenging situation.
Sorry, Maria, you might have to come a little bit closer.
Can you hear me now? Everything Louise touched on hits home for us. So additional challenges. Well, I mean, first of all, starting off with breastfeeding journey, family support, you know, to tell you, well, this is what I did, try this and that. Louise mentioned earlier having to go to a different room and feed her baby. And on our first journey, that was very much what it was like at the start. I remember Christmas Day with the in-laws and having to go upstairs and like take myself away from the celebrations to feed our then 4-month-old baby. And I think something clicked then that we just thought, no, I might be the first person to do this, but hopefully won't be the last. So we just have to become a bit more confident and say, look, this is my baby. She needs fed. If you're uncomfortable, feel free to leave. And so we probably, you know, made people feel uncomfortable, got some eye rolls and things like that. But we just got over it and kind of nudged each other along to keep going. Definitely feeding out and about is a huge thing when you're from a small town or a rural area. Everybody knows everybody, and the last thing you want is for school with or some ex-boyfriend or something to come along and see your boobs in a cafe. The more and more you do it, the more and more other people feel comfortable doing it as well. So what we had to do was very much find our tribe of people who were in the same situation and say, look, let's go for a cup of tea together. And if we have to feed our babies, we feed our babies. And then that grew and grew through the likes of the Sure Start groups and going for a cup of tea after those. And, you know, now 6 years on, I've seen a huge improvement in the amount of people breastfeeding out in public, in the amount of people that have been trained to become breastfeeding peer support volunteers through the Western Trust. As a volunteer myself, I've had loads more referrals, so more breastfeeding mummies coming out of Altnagalvin and Enniskillen who need that support. So it's definitely changing for the better, which is great.
That's incredible. I think that was kind of the next question that I was going to come to and ask you. What changes are you seeing in your areas when it comes to breastfeeding? So, Gail, for you, I know you touched on it as well earlier that you feel more confident now. Do you think it is in addition to that societal change, or do you think it was primarily your own confidence that changed that?
I think it was there has been a societal change, but I think primarily it was probably my own confidence. Now, Cyril is obviously bigger now, and I wouldn't go into a shop and breastfeed her at this stage because it's morning and night. But when she was weird, I wouldn't have cared if I was out and she needed fed. She was getting fed. You know, that was number one. That was the priority. The support, definitely, peer support is invaluable. Even in that, you know, in somebody having a cup of coffee with you and sitting down just to get a wee bit of confidence at the start if needed. But even things like having to phone somebody in the middle of the night and say, you know, she's not latching, what am I doing wrong? Come and take a look. You know, I'm very, very privileged as well because I have a sister-in-law, a lovely, lovely girl, and she's breastfed me once, probably for 15 years now, non-stop. With her, she's 5 youngsters. But my girls, and even all my son, are now have been surrounded by women breastfeeding, and it's normalised it for them. So I'm hoping that the settle shift, when my girls who are now 20 and 24 have their only ones, that they'll not have to think about it the way we did.
Yeah.
You know. But I think society has changed, but I've also changed as a person myself, and I've become more confident. So
it's amazing to hear that. And just saying within that, the changes from your first and your next experience of breastfeeding, a lot of people are talking about their experiences within their families of people who maybe previously were supportive of breastfeeding and now you're finding it a little bit different. So no, Esther has put in the chat there, I think you have to be hugely confident to breastfeed without support. My mum breastfed her children in the early 60s, but my father was horrified when I began to prepare to breastfeed my own baby in the early 90s at a table in a restaurant. But my mum was angry with him and told him to get over his embarrassment. Even though she wouldn't have dreamt of breastfeeding in public, she wanted to support me in doing it. So how has generational change maybe impacted on yourselves? I know from my experience, I was very shy to breastfeed in front of my parents in the beginning, until I sat down with my dad one day and we were having a conversation, and he was a milk inspector, and he grew up on a dairy farm, and we sat and we were chatting about the fact that farmers would go up and down the country looking for colostrum for their calves. So why are we not encouraging mothers to feed their babies this amazing product that farmers are paying so much money for, going up and down the country for? And that was my moment with my parents that changed the whole breastfeeding experience for me. What about for yourselves? What was your experience like with parents with breastfeeding? And was there a change in that along the lines?
I might jump in there this time, Catherine. My father, I remember taking peas out of the freezer to make room to freeze baselins, which was the kind of the term we used for the calves colostrum. So my dad knew the importance of first milk, but still probably he'd do it with Gail, so it wasn't that I had to break the I didn't have to go through that ceiling. But my father-in-law definitely had a bit of a culture shock when I started breastfeeding in front of him. And I think I was older when I had Emmett. I was 31 and I was already an MP, and I had a neck on me then anyway. And my mother-in-law would say, you'd be more comfortable down the room. And I'd go, no, I'm comfortable here. Now, I'd sit at the kitchen table and feed the baby, but I'd put my handbag on the table so that to spare their blushes that my father-in-law couldn't see anything, or couldn't, even though he couldn't see anything anyway. So he knew for a fact he couldn't say anything. So I didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable, but at the same time, I didn't want that isolation of being stuck down in the room. And once I did it a few times, he got over it. Now, he probably still didn't love the fact that I whipped the boobs out in front of him, but he managed. One of the questions earlier was, how do we encourage more people to do it? I think we encourage more people to do it by who they see doing it. I'd love to see some of these influencers doing it. When I started breastfeeding Emmett, we didn't have internet at all, so I didn't have the support groups or any of that kind of online support. But now things have changed so much. I really hate it when I see a negative ad or I see a negative storyline in the TV. I think it's really important that soap characters are breastfeeding babies, but it has to be seen as positive. Too often there's negative connotations to that. And I recently had a meeting with I'll not name them, a global fast food chain. And I said, you need to do, you are unique in your demographic. You have families coming into your restaurants and you have loads and loads of teenagers. And I said, why don't you make it a policy within your branch to encourage mums to come into your restaurant to feed? And they said, well, how would we even do that? And I said, free stuff. Everybody loves free stuff. Offer breastfeeding mothers free coffee, for example, or free, certainly water or whatever, make it. I said, if women were going into your restaurant to feed, teenagers would see them doing it. And then when they would become breastfeeding mums themselves, it wouldn't be the first time they saw anybody. We need to remove that I'm the first in my family, and I, you know, Louise was visionary, Maria, you know, all these women who've had to really be leaders and visionary in terms of what they're doing in their own communities, but we need to break that down. So they actually, the chain I'm talking about, were actually very interested in what I was saying, and I said, look, get me the name of the person I need to talk to at headquarters to do this, because if teenagers see women breastfeeding and see that it's not a big deal, they're more likely to do it themselves. And I think that's how we normalize it. If you see it, you can be it. And if you normalize breastfeeding to the extent that teenagers are growing up with women breastfeeding around them, then they're going to be more inclined to have a go themselves.
Absolutely. I think that's
it's crazy. Catherine, can I come in there?
Absolutely.
I think it's actually crazy the way we want, and it's programmed into them, baby borns and tiny tots and everything. When Sarah lifts the doll and she looks at a bottle to feed it, and I'd say, why don't you give her your milk? You know, and I just think even that industry, it's all dolls and bottles, you know, and maybe there's something even we can do there that might change opinions. Or now it obviously horrifies her daddy when I would say that, or when she would sit up to feed her doll, you know, but I think it has to be from that age. It has to be so normal for them.
But you're kind of shifting another generation. Like, you're looking at the education, shifting their mind frame, not putting bottles or anything into play groups and things like that. And I've kind of thought about this, but have I got enough power? You know, but it's the likes of Michelle's that are telling me I can do this, but I know I can't. But you know, but it's just that all women saying keep going, keep supporting, and just we're all fighting the one thing. We're all trying to build another person up, but I think it's lost in conversation a lot of the time, because it just feels like we're just trying to prove a point that boobs are better, but we're trying to help another parent.
Yeah. And another child and a whole generation. It's not just helping that one, it might be that one cafe, but if you help a mother to continue her breast journey, if her children build up those immunities and all of that. And I mean, every opportunity I get in every meeting, and they're talking about COVID and the impact it's going to have and all of that. And I go back to breastfeeding, take everything back. If we get our breastfeeding rates up, our children will have stronger immune systems. They will be more resilient and ready to take on whatever comes at them. So, you know, really and truly, we've put all sorts of things to health ministers for the last 20 years, including, you know, longer maternity leave for women who are exclusively breastfeeding, you know, and that up to that 6 months. If you're breastfeeding at 6 months exclusively, then there should be a period of time where you get additional maternity leave to help you continue on that journey. There's we need breastfeeding legislation, and I will never stop regretting the fact that I never got to be health minister, because that would have been one of the first thing I did. I'd already told Michael McBride, be you ready for me being health minister, because I'm bringing that legislation in. We need to legislate, but not just legislate for making it easier for women to breastfeed, but legislate around the code monitoring, around the formula industry, extremely powerful. All of those issues need to be tackled at a legislative level.
I think that's such a powerful message to have here, and say that, but leading in the fact of that each of us do have the power to be involved in that. And I mean, Michelle, from your position, you have a position to be actively talking about it, but each of us are going to be able to enforce and push forward in these ideas and let people know about that. And that's something that you can probably talk about this evening as well. If you come along to our campaign and an advocacy session this evening, you'll find out the information about how you can push through that information to the people who have the power to get those voices heard. But it's about, as Lois said, getting our voices together and being heard, and recognizing the power that we have in our own voices. We have some messages in the chat here as well, just saying about indeed, those of us who are no longer breastfeeding, well, my youngest is 23 now, Esther, brilliant. We need to actively encourage those mums with young babies that we see out and about. So what would you encourage, if you were out and you saw a young mum out breastfeeding, or any aged mum out breastfeeding, what would you like to be saying to her, or what would you like somebody to be saying to you if they met you out and about while you were breastfeeding? If we go to Louise first of all, and then we'll move over to Maria.
Well, I'll remember one of the times I don't really breastfeed out in public. Firstly, the last year we haven't been allowed to be out in public. And then I'm working, I'm busy working, so I am just breastfeeding anywhere. But with my my older two, if I was out, I was very conscious, and it does come from your family not supporting you. But anytime that I did and I got the eye, like I can always remember this woman came up and she's like, "You are so awesome," and I was like, "Oh," and I started welling up, and I was like, "Thank you so much." I just needed to hear that because I was so anxious, I was so nervous. But I can remember I was walking outside of Rushmere in the car park to my car, and this woman, she looked absolutely stunning, gorgeous, designer handbag, and she was walking along, breastfeeding her baby, strutting her stuff. And I was in awe, and I was like, "Oh my goodness." And I was like, well done. And she was just like, "I'm busy." And I was like, "Okay, you go for it." She just didn't care. She was strutting her stuff. And I was like, well done. She was just can do attitude. And I was like, well done. So yeah, just keep going. Just if you see somebody, just tell them, just keep going. That's enough for me.
How about you, Maria? What would you say to a breastfeeding mum, or what would you have liked to have heard, or what did you hear?
I love everything Louise said. I think sometimes breastfeeding is so subtle that when you really build it up, but when you're out and about breastfeeding, sometimes people don't even notice. And that in itself was kind of a relief because it was like, okay, I can do this a bit. Definitely love to see, rather than even just random people coming up and giving you a pat in the back, at the actual establishments where you're having your tea and coffee, to have the breastfeeding welcome here initiative in place. So to see that sticker on a door and know there's not going to be a taboo, I can go in there and feel comfortable feeding my baby. Or the likes of Michelle said, a wee bit of encouragement from places, someone coming over and giving you a cup of tea or giving you a glass of water. A real incentive for you to just go out and feed and not think anything of it, and have a wee bonus because you've got a cup of tea for feeding your baby in public. As a breastfeeding peer supporter, I do try, if I see mums out and about, to give them a wee nod or a bit of encouragement. And actually, because it is few and far between, you don't see very many breastfeeding mummies out and about where we're from. I did see one right up at the window in I just knocked the window and pretty much did a victory dance for her because I was so impressed, that she just had the confidence to do that. And I'd say everybody that walked past that window saw her breastfeeding, so she did her bit to normalize it. I wanted to throw her a parade. So if we can all just give each other the wee nod or thumbs up or well done, it'll push people to keep doing it.
That's brilliant. I love the idea of doing victory dances for people when we see them breastfeeding. I think that is something that we should definitely bring in too.
I was so excited. I just didn't know how to react. Arms waving and tapping in the street for her.
I can tell you, there's a TikTok viral video in that going around every time you see a breastfeeding mum doing a video to say congratulations. How about you, Gail? What would you like to have heard as a breastfeeding mum out and about, or what would you like to say to somebody?
That somebody coming over and handing you a glass of water can be so important when you're sitting there and you're surrounded by youngsters and the baby and whatever. And the wee cards, I got one of them one day and I thought, fabulous, they are brilliant. Yeah, I definitely would be passing that on to somebody else. I thought they were just fabulous. So just a wee bit of support and just, are you okay? Can I get you a glass of water? Just something as basic as that can make a difference.
Mm-hmm. And as you, from a grandmother's point of view, could somebody say something to you to support you if you're with your daughter and she's breastfeeding, or what would you like to see people doing supporting your daughter?
Well, what the girls are saying here, and I think it's the eye contact, that just the wee nod, that, that wee connection, and you don't have to say anything, just the eye contact. You're there to support them, acknowledge them. the glass of water, Gail, honestly, like, you know, anytime I see a wee mammy sitting about, I said, do you need water? I need water, mama. So, but it's just instinctive, and you know, and even as a grandparent and that there, and you know what, it just gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling. So it does, just to see mommies, because it's such a special stage in your life. Like I'm way on down the line, my children are in their 30s and the grandchildren are coming along now. But you know, as the next generation down, it gives me the warm glow in my heart that, you know, one of the things that I've done right and showing examples and giving encouragement. So we all, you know, it's about the positive messages, big key messages to get out there. And we all have personal power, and just that drip effect. And together, all collectively, I really do think there's a massive shift, and thankfully for the better, and a very positive message and massive shift in, you know, encouraging breastfeeding and breastfeeding support, and you know, not chipping away at the taboo images and perceptions and everything else. So you know, I really do. I just think even if it's a wee gesture, a smile, and acknowledgement. You know, I haven't done a war dance yet, so I haven't. But you know, just maybe the wee thumbs up or just the reassurance, because you scan, if you see a wee mammy feeding, you scan to see if she got a glass of water, because you just know how thirsty you be. So you do. And as you say, if you maybe have a couple of older toddlers or that, you're hemmed in, see, and it's just not that easy getting out to get a glass of water. So I just think that, you know, the positive key messages, the drip effect, and the peer support, and I feel collectively it's no one thing, it's all in positive messages coming forward, and what we'll take forward, you know, the big shift and change of attitudes.
Catherine.
Yes, go ahead.
Nikita mentioned their desexualization of breastfeeding, and I think that's really important too. And I had fed Isha at the executive table, and some of my executive colleagues wouldn't have been very keen on the idea. Sammy Wilson spoke about it in Westminster and talked about women being exhibitionists. And I breastfed in front of him at the executive, so that he could see. I wasn't conscious about anybody seeing my breasts. You couldn't see them anyway. I was more conscious of people seeing me rolls of fat around my tummy, and but I breastfed there so that there's a lot might have an easier time breastfeeding the baby. Or if somebody could say to Gregory Campbell, don't be giving me looks about breastfeeding. You let Michelle Gildern, you breastfeed in front of you, so why can't I? So I was trying to empower other women who I didn't even know, but I just thought it was really important. And that whole point of talking about breastfeeding mothers as being exhibitionists is really unfortunate language. And, you know, especially from the boy it was coming from, you know, he's a bit of an exhibitionist himself, as we all know. But, you know, I just think we have to be very forceful in saying to people, don't be talking nonsense. You're only trying to be controversial, and you don't know what you're talking about. So I think we do need, again, we're an army when we get together, and we can take anybody on who's trying to degenerate what we're doing.
But putting power into the positivity of it, and experiencing it from what the true meaning of it is, to feed our children, and to empower them, and to empower ourselves. And I think that's an amazing point to finish off this panel. I just want to say thank you all so much. You were absolutely incredible. The conversation was wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Thank you to everybody who has joined us today. Just a reminder of the sessions that are going ahead the rest of the day. We've got our sold out session with the wonderful Louise Taylor now at 1 o'clock. So if you're coming along to that, make sure that you're there with plenty of time. And then this evening, like I said, our campaigning and advocacy session with Wanya Baha, Birthwise, and Dr. Jennifer Hanratty from Breastival. And that is chaired by the wonderful Claire Flynn from our board as well, who has years of experience in public relations and communications. And we've worked together on something really, really important in an advocacy toolkit, which will be launching this evening as well. So please come along, find out all about that, and have your input in the session as well, because it's really important to hear what you are doing and what you want to do, and we'll be encouraging you in how you can do that. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you all in the next session, and have a great day, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.